This episode is sponsored by Fred Block's Magic Meets Disney Fan Gatherings. Join more than 550 fans in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania on July 19, 2008, as Magic Meets celebrates its 5th year of fun, friends, and a little bit of magic. Magic Meets is a proud supporter of the Walt Disney World Today podcast. Walt Disney World Today will have the exclusive live broadcast of all of the day's events. For more information, please visit www.magicmeets.com.
This is Walt Disney World Today. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the world.
It's Monday, February 4th, 2008, and this is episode 366 of Walt Disney World Today. I'm Matt Hochberg from StudioCentral.com. On the show today is my drinking buddy, Len Testa of The Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World. And Len, I think you started without me.
Let's just say that I'm down with a discount right now, Matt.
Also on the show today, we have Mike Scopa of All Ears Now. Welcome, Mike.
I'm afraid I've done something wrong. I made my handle like yours, but somehow it looks different on my picture. What's wrong?
Oh,
wow.
Okay, I'm going to go with Making of Me.
No, I'm going to go with Imagination.
This goes way back to Space Mountain, RCA's home of future living.
Oh, nice.
Wow, you're old.
Good one.
What's RCA?
Yeah, what's RCA?
Oh, nice.
And also on the show today, we have Mike Newell of Mouse World Radio. Welcome, Mike.
I just want to say, because of Len and his partying, unedited copies of this show will be available. Send me an email, and I'll set up a PayPal account.
I can barely type right now. This is awesome.
Well,
I love you guys.
On the show today, we're talking about kind of what we've learned in the past year or so, because I think, as everyone knows, every trip you go down to Walt Disney World for, you kind of learn something new. Maybe you try something you haven't tried before that, is new to you, or you learn kind of a lesson like, oh, it's really smart if you don't do this at this hour or something along those lines. So we decided we would kind of share some of the thoughts that have occurred to us in the past year or so, and we encourage all of you, of our listeners, to share with us what you've learned in the past year by going to this episode's show notes, and you can post the comments right there at wdwtoday.com. I'm going to start things off here. This actually just happened to me the day that we recorded this, and I had my first ever meal at Le Cellier, and I've learned why it is so impossible to get an ADR over there. And the reason why it is impossible to get an ADR at Le Cellier is simply because the restaurant is about 4 feet by 4 feet big.
It's like the size of a Manhattan phone booth. I mean, Jesus.
I mean, I walked in there and I was like, oh, well, this explains it.
Where's the rest of it?
Where's the rest of it?
The first time you see Lou Moncello. I mean,
I mean, they should have one of those mirrors on one side of it so it looks like it goes on for a really long time, but it's really not. I mean, geez. But, I mean, it was very good, I admit, but, when the places only have, 10 tables, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but, I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Right.
Len, why don't you tell, I was discussing this with you before the show, when you were sober. You were saying, tell us the stat you were talking about, the 70% stat.
I mean, here's the thing, that most Disney restaurants are 70% booked anyway. It's like the Disney hotel. Throughout the year, they average 90% occupancy. It doesn't take much in the way of crowds to push them over the edge into 100% occupancy. And that's the thing. People think that that there's a slow season to Disney World anymore, and there's not.
Yeah.
So especially restaurants like Le Cellier, which you probably average occupancy of 70 or 80%. It doesn't take more than a couple dozen families trying to get reservations at a particular day to completely book the entire restaurant.
That's right. And it's something else you mentioned, Len. I think that's something that I've learned, is that there really are no more slow seasons. Especially 2007 really taught me that. I mean, I used to think there was a couple of times, but really there's no season. You might get lucky and have a day or two that's kind of on the dead side. But really to say that, remember there used to be literally seasons. You could have a couple of weeks here and you're good, and a couple of weeks here and you're good. But that really doesn't happen anymore in my experience.
I mean, there's a couple of days here and there. Like in January, I think we had some callers during the live show say that they had no waits, just walk-ons in the Magic Kingdom last week. But in general, geez, I mean, you're looking at 30-minute waits everywhere, and Disney really tries to do that. They've got specials, they've got incentives, they've got parties, they've got discounts, all set up to do stuff like that.
Yeah, Scopa, wouldn't you agree with that?
Probably doesn't help that shows like ours say, "Oh, go in January" because it's slow.
Exactly.
No, I agree. I think that the most valid point that Len made is that there really is not a slow period at Walt Disney World, because I think that Walt Disney World recognized those areas that were slow and have made adjustments so that they're no longer slow.
Yeah, no, I agree. Mike, what's on Scopa? What's on your what's one thing that you've learned or experienced for the first time in the last year?
I can remember sometimes being up late at night and being hungry and not knowing where to go. And during the Tower of Terror 13K race, I think we all went to Peekaboo's at, I believe it was the Dolphin Hotel, and it's open It's open 24 hours, and I think that's nice to know that there is something that's opened 24 hours a day, and you can get something hot to eat there. And that was probably one of the biggest things I've learned over the last year, that if I am up at night and I'm hungry, Mike Newell, take note that we should have gone there at the marathon trip. Peekaboo's used to be Tubby's Buffeteria, I guess it was called, Tubby's Tubbeteria or whatever, at the Dolphin. That's something that everybody should know in case they're doing something late and they happen to be at a theme park and they forget to eat.
Have? Yeah, what do we eat? Because it was like 2:00 in the morning. We ended up eating something.
I think I had meatloaf or something.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. I ended up having like a French dip or something at like 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, I mean it was pretty good too.
Yeah, I mean it definitely wasn't bad. I mean, and it wasn't crowded either. That's the thing.
No, I didn't expect it to be crowded.
Newell?
Mike kind of turned me on to this, and I've decided that I always had a thing where I liked what I liked, and I always went back, and I always did the same, especially when it came to dining. I always went to the same restaurants again.
Yes.
But in the last few trips that I've done, especially whenever I'm with Scopa, we wind up going someplace I've never been before. And the experience that I've gotten from that is to say, at least I'm going to try at least to do 1 or 2 new restaurants on every trip.
That's it. That's really, I think it's a key thing you brought up, Mike, because a lot of people, they come and they like doing a lot of things they've done for years, because that's, it's Disney World. It brings back those memories. I remember the last time we were here. Yeah, wasn't that great? And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But I think you bring up a good point, is that it's really important to try, whether it be a new restaurant every trip or try a ride you haven't ridden before. It adds more to the experience, because there are a lot of places that I've tried for the first time and I absolutely love it. Now it becomes the usual, but I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't really pushed myself to try new things. And if you, like you said, Mike, if you try maybe 2 new restaurants a trip, that can really just expand your trip, because it adds another dimension to it. It adds those potential for adding new memories. And if it stinks, okay,
then you don't go back.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a great point. Len?
I've really tried.
I'm perfect.
Hard
That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I've tried all of the restaurants in Walt Disney World. I think I've been to literally, if not every one, almost every single one. Some of the downtown Disney ones I might have missed. But I've really tried hard to find good, inexpensive restaurants in offsite, but within like 10 or 15 minutes of driving in the Magic Kingdom. And I think we found a couple of really good ones. The Orlando Vista that you mentioned, Matt, was that you suggested wasn't bad. I mean, it's not the cleanest place. No, I mean it's clean enough, and the pillows are a little flat, and the beds aren't quite as comfortable as they were when they were brand new. But overall, it's not bad. Finding good value lodging like that, I think, is the thing that I find most interesting, and also finding good dining off-site.
If you're looking for off-site, Len, generally speaking, what's the best resource to make sure you're not staying at like a terrible place like a Howard Johnson?
You mean besides the book?
Yeah, I wish there was some sort of a guide,
like a guide of some kind that rated these things. It's interesting. Interesting. I'm so totally slurring my words right now.
We can't tell.
Because I can't. Actually, I have my eyes closed because the room was spinning. the guide has the top 30 hotel deals, and we do try to stay at most of those resorts to see whether they're decent deals or not. And most of those are under $100 a night. In fact, a lot of them are under $50 a night. And if we put it in there, it generally means that we have high confidence that it's going to be a good value for the money. So the top 30 hotel deals section of the guide would work out pretty well. And you might want to use that in conjunction with something like Travelocity or Expedia or Orbitz to see who's got the least expensive deals right now.
Cool. Scopa?
Well, it's funny because during the year, I'm sure we all get emails from time to time, and listeners will send in questions. And someone asked me a question, and I did some research, and I found out, and I had no idea, that there are. It's very limited, but there is a Utilidor at Epcot. It's very limited. It runs from the back of the Mission Space area and down through both Interventions pavilions. It doesn't reach all the way to the Land and Sea Pavilion, but it's somewhat limited in the Spaceship Earth Interventions area. And there's also something like a Utilidor or a tunnel that's under Boardwalk. It starts from behind where the convention center is, and it runs all the way down to Jelly Rolls. And until I had checked into that, I had thought that there were only Utilidors at the Magic Kingdom in Disney World. So that was kind of interesting to find out.
Absolutely.
It is interesting.
One of the things that I learned about was, obviously I spent a lot of time in the studios and always looking for new things. And one of the things that I found was actually, I was alerted to this actually by a great blogger out there. Her name is Jessica. She writes "If We Can Dream It, Then We Can Do It" blog. There's actually there's at the studios they have the jetpack and the helmet from the Rocketeer in one of the little counter service areas, and it's really pretty well hidden. It's at Peavy's Polar Pipeline, and they have right to the side. They have the Rocketeer helmet, the Rocketeer jetpack, and they have like the schematics for the Rocketeer jetpack and like a fake newspaper from like the movie. It's really interesting. I mean, that was something I never saw. Years went by that place, never paid one bit of attention. It was the slushy place, and that was something that I learned. And I thought that was really cool because Rocketeer is one of those movies that I'm sure none of us have seen in the last
ever
10 years or ever.
I saw it once.
Yeah, we've all seen it once, when it came out back in the day, and haven't seen it since. And it's because it didn't really it wasn't that much of a huge success. But I just thought it was really interesting to find something like that. Newell?
Cool.
Another thing I learned this year, especially during Mouse Fest, and then the recent trip we did on the marathon weekend. When we go down there, we usually run around to try to get as much in as we can. And the last couple of trips, I've also actually just took some time and stopped and talked to friends and just hung out. And we hung out over at, the Tomorrowland Terrace? I mean, for hours, just seeing old friends. And I think what I'm going to start to do on a couple of future trips is just to take the time out and sit and just, not kill myself running around and just soak in all the atmosphere and what's going around me and who happens to be with me and take advantage of that.
Yeah. Disney World's not going anywhere, and that's except for the Imagination Pavilion. That place is gone. But
unless that's your only time going and a once in a lifetime trip, or you don't go. I mean, since we go often, I think instead of running around like crazy, I think I'm going to just stop and.
You got to take time to stop and smell the roses, so to speak.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. I mean, the more times you go down, there's less of a desire or a drive to see every ride over and over again. You really tend to hit your favorites. Maybe every other trip, you try and hit the attractions that you haven't seen in a while, and to do new restaurants and things. But really, it's a lot easier when you're coming back. When you already have your next trip planned, it's a lot easier to just relax and stop and stay off the beaten path.
That's right. One of the resorts.
I love you guys.
That's the liquor talking.
Exactly.
I've become a newfound fan of Saratoga Springs. I stayed there for the first time at Mouse Fest, and I I went there the other day for dinner at the Turf Club restaurant, and really just wonderfully, I just really haven't really appreciated what a great resort it is, especially considering when you're paying for cash, if you're not using DVC points, you can get that place for nothing. And I've started to branch out to Saratoga. I really enjoy this one, and it's gotten to me not only that, I've seen, wow, Saratoga is really this great. Now I want to also go and try Old Key West, which Newell's been talking about for years. We've been talking about the podcast he's been talking about, and they're both similarly priced in terms of if you're paying for cash. So I've learned that Saratoga Springs is a great place, and you should definitely give it a shot if you want somewhere different that's about the same price as a moderate a lot of times with an annual pass discount. And it's also inspired me now to go and try the Old Key West Resort because, you see what's behind door number 1 and you start to wonder, okay, now what's behind door number 2? Did anyone else have any last things that they've learned?
The only thing is that with the new things that what they've done to the Haunted Mansion, I'm under the impression that I had no idea what that story was all about. Now I have a better idea as to what that story is all about, and I'm thankful that the Imagineers did a few things to straighten me out.
Yeah, no, it definitely straightened out the story quite a bit compared to what it was before. I'm trying to think of new attractions that we've ridden. Obviously not like new attractions to us. Has there been any rides that you guys haven't ridden before that are new to you? I know that I rode Cali River Rapids this past year. I had ridden it before, like 98, 99. I hadn't ridden it for years, and I tried it again, and I learned that the ride is about 5 seconds long. And that's probably why I don't, all there is you go up, you go through the burnt rainforest, and you go down, and that's it. It's the shortest ride in Walt Disney World history, and that's something that I remember, after I rode it this past summer, I was like, wow, that's it?
I went on Dumbo last year, and I hadn't been on it ever before. It was one of my last attractions that I've been on. I still haven't seen La Nuba, but I will next year. I will this year.
You guys anyone else ridden anything that's new to them?
I did the carousel. Cinderella's. Is it Cinderella's carousel?
Oh yeah.
Did that at Mouse Fest with some of you guys?
Yeah, no. Did we ride that at in October?
Oh,
Mike?
that might have been. Yeah, that might have been Tower Terror weekend, right?
Yeah, we went there for a Pirate and Princess party.
Right. But that's something I don't have children, so it's not something. Me and Mary tend to blow off Fantasyland a lot because there's really not much there unless we're there on a hard ticket event where the lines aren't so bad. Those hard ticket events, we'll tend to do those attractions because there's no lines. Since we don't have kids, that's not something that we go out of our way to see.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Fantasyland because I tried out for the first time Pinocchio's Village House, and
what did you think?
It's a poor man's garden grill because you can sit by the window and watch all the Small World people go by, kind of like how you can do the same thing at Garden Grill. So I mean, it was okay. I mean, the food fare is nothing to jump up and down about. I had a nice turkey sandwich, wasn't bad.
Panini, man, panini. It's got good panini.
Yeah, is that what it is? I had the turkey.
Really, I didn't think the panini was any good at all. I thought, so when I got my panini, it was all like, okay, so imagine a triangular, an isosceles triangle of bread, right? So two sides equidistant or equal size, one not. All of obviously, exactly. All of the meat and all of the cheese and the 2 slices of red pepper were all bunched in the middle, like this. It couldn't touch the sides, so it was like 3/4 of it was bread. And then all of the stuff was mushed in the middle.
So you know what your problem was, Len?
I looked.
You were sober.
That's what it was.
Either that, or my panini standards are lower than
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I've heard. Your panini standards are lower. Yeah.
Well, that's going to be it for us today. If you want to find our older episodes, read our show notes, or send us your comments, visit the Walt Disney World Today website at wdwtoday.com. For Len Testa, Mike Scopa, and Mike Newell, I'm Matt Hochberg. We'll see you on the next show.
This has been a production of Mouse World Radio. This episode is sponsored by Fred Block's Magic Meets Disney Fan Gatherings. Join more than 550 fans in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania on July 19, 2008, as Magic Meets celebrates its 5th year of fun, friends, and a little bit of magic. Magic Meets is a proud supporter of the Walt Disney World Today podcast. Walt Disney World Today will have the exclusive live broadcast of all of the day's events. For more information, please visit www.magicmeets.com.